they haven't proven anything. And so even in the B2 module, the Keep on the Borderlands, unless those players come back with heads on a stick from the Case of Chaos, they're not going to be treated as heroes. Plain and simple. I've had ineffective players before, like in the B2 module. They went to the Caves of Chaos like 3 or 4 times, and each time they ran away. They accomplished nothing. They did not come back with any proof beyond the fact, yeah, we went to the Caves of Chaos. There was a lot of caves. We almost got killed. Do you really honestly think they're going to be treated like heroes after that? Adventurers go there all the time and get slaughtered and never be seen again. As far as the villagers know, these players could be the bandits. Hello, welcome back to the Three Orcs channel. This is David, and in this video, we're going to cover a very important NPC for the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. Written by Frank Mencher, Gary Gygax gave him the notes to write this module, and part of those notes was there's only 4 locations keyed for the village of Nulb for the module. A couple reasons for that. Gary Gygax did not give him all the notes because if he did, the module would end up being over 1,000 pages published in the 80s, which is not feasible back then. Also, Frank wanted to keep this more simple, so the module did state quite clearly that they expected the Dungeon Master to expand and flush out the campaign, including the village of Nulb. And so what they did was only provided 4 locations in Nulb for the Dungeon Master to start with, to connect with the different various factions of the Temple of Elemental Evil, so you can expand this to a greater epic campaign world in Greyhawk. Now, anybody following my website and my project for the Temple of Elemental Evil, I have expanded the World of Greyhawk around Nulb, which included many other villages and geographical locations within the area. Now, this video is going to be focused on one NPC, and he's already keyed in the Temple of Elemental Evil. It's Otis the Blacksmith. He's an agent of Furyondy. He's a 10th level ranger. And there is basic information about him in the actual module. Very basic. You got a small stat block, you got a little bit of history and description of him. So you had to do a lot of investigation. Throughout the years, there's been interviews with Gary Gygax and other Dungeon Masters working on this campaign, and I pieced together quite a bit. And I did, as Gary Gygax intended, expand the Temple of Elemental Evil campaign. And that includes Otis as a character and all the other NPCs that interact with him in the world. I'm currently writing a module for the DM's Guild. It's required to do this in 5th edition to be released on there because they get their half. Basically, all that means to me is the stat blocks from 5e. But I do keep the stat blocks, the level, and certain things like their magic items useful for any Dungeon Master using any rule system. They can easily convert it back to whatever rule system that you're using. But the rest of it's lore. You know, you got background description, personality descriptions, all that kind of stuff. It's in there that's useful for any Dungeon Master running this campaign, whatever other rule set you're using. So let's take a look at this. On the screen here is the module I'm publishing. So the module, all my modules I'm publishing is based on my World Anvil website. Verbabonk Campaign Guide 576 Common Year. That's where I originally write these articles. It's an ongoing project. I have a lot of Dungeon Masters helping out too. We all collaborate on the Three Orcs Discord channel. I work on the artwork, maps, or articles for an NPC, and we discuss it. You know, I have questions, they have questions. All their Dungeon Masters get on there too, and they talk about their campaigns as well. You know, what can be done with their players and how the campaign flows, and a lot of questions like that. The campaign world. When I convert those web pages to a module, a lot of rewriting needs to be done, a lot of rework because of formatting. As you can see here on the screen, that's the front cover. And this table of contents is not done yet. This is a work in progress. I hope to get this done soon. This will be my 5th module. I got to make the maps, and I just finished a map up. That was holding me back for a while there. All the quests. And see the formatting there? Really professional. I take my cues off of Old School Essentials. They're the de facto standard for game system, rule systems. The best layout design. I have flavor text and bullet points, and everything's to the point. I even add charts when I can. There's charts in here too that I've made. And I even add dialogue and quotes. So let's go ahead and get down to Otis here. Right now I'm on page 118. This module is getting huge. I was talking about this last night on our live stream, and everybody was like, wow, look what you've done, because I reviewed a little bit of this already on the live stream. And people are pretty happy with it. See, there's a chart right there I made. Day versus night, and room rates down below. I try to use every trick of the trade to make well formatted, nice looking pages, and I make sure I use every square inch of the page. There's a lot more information on my websites than there are going to be on here, but it's handpicked, it's rewritten, it's condensed to the point. It's a lot of people need a module that's printable, they can use at their table, or don't have an internet connection, because you can't use World Anvil at the table while running the game if you don't have an internet connection. And so that's another reason why people like PDFs. And it's also more condensed and to the point and laid out better and easy to look up stuff. That's why people like the modules. And also supports me doing more work too. Let's go ahead. I think it's location 3. Otis is location 2. There it is. Okay, so this is the location, not the NPC. In this module, the first part of the module is locations. You have flavor text for the location, services, stabling and feed, a little bit about the NPCs there, some artwork. So it's only a one pager for this location. Other locations have 3, 4, or 5 pages, depending on the location, because there might be more NPCs there, and a lot more going on. But I knew that I'm going to create another article just for Otis. So I just wanted to get the location done. And I'll add links here too, that we can quickly go to their stat block. You guys all recognize that, Mother Screns. All right, scroll to the bottom. I just exported this latest version. Yeah, let's go all the way to the bottom. Way down to page 118, I believe. Let's see, 118, 19. Okay. We're in the blocks NPC section of the module. I kept that last. That's the last section of the module. Because I have location chapter, and then after that I did a quest. Yeah, quests. All the quests that has anything to do with all the locations and all the NPCs. That's a big section. And then you have the NPC section. So I make sure it stays organized. So the stat blocks, like I said before, it has to be 5th edition if I'm going to release it on DM's Guild. It's the only way you're allowed to release any Greyhawk material. It has to be on DM's Guild. And the requirement is it has to be 5th edition. As you can see, the lore is not edition specific at all. It's a campaign specific, Greyhawk. So I want to go over this and talk about how much more I've added to Otis based on a lot of other Dungeon Masters in the past and other professional writers like Skip Williams. So I started off with who he is. So he's rugged, a stoic presence in the village of Nulb, known locally as a skilled smith and a stable keeper. He maintains a quiet yet undeniable influence over the town. Otis appears to be nothing more than a seasoned ex-mercenary running a simple smithy. That's a standard trope, so people would expect that. His services are essential to the rougher folk of Nulb, from fixing horseshoes and crafting weapons and maintaining armor, and those who require a blacksmith. Now, this is all expanded lore based on a lot of information I found. I tend to steer away from a DM's homebrew thing that he wrote up for his campaign. And I sometimes I get guys on my Discord channel that will kind of say, "Hey, I got a NPC for you, or I have an organization for you." And I said, "Yeah, that's cool. That's great. You can use it in your campaign." But this isn't my campaign. What I'm writing here, what I'm producing, it's for everybody. I want to make sure my core principles is stick to canon as close as possible, with the whole essence of expanding as Gary Gygax intended. And then I follow Joseph Block's articles where he has 15 years of blogs covering the Temple of Elemental Evil and his investigation, analyzing all the modules, his conversations and interviews with Gary Gygax, and find out the truth of what it should have been. There is no Thurusdun. It's the Elder Elemental God, and Loth is behind everything, and Uis. I could go on and on about that, but all my videos do that. You guys need to watch my other videos too. So, with that idea, I expanded Otis. I found some articles by Skip Williams too, and a couple others. I can't name them right now. And they did some write-ups that related to the history of the Circle of Eight. And so I kind of pull all that together. So his early life, he was born in 534 Common Year. And I had to check his age in the World Anvil to make sure I got that right. So he was born in the village of Hamlet, a modest community in the Cron Hills in the Viscounty of Verbank. If you guys spot anything, I'm still editing. And I have a couple of editors that can go over this with me to make sure I don't make any mistakes. This is a produced module that people will buy. I want to make sure I do an expert job. And if you guys ever do find any problems with my products, let me know right away and I'll edit and update it. That's what I like about World Anvil. You can do that instantly. It doesn't matter. But when it comes to a module, what happens is when there's an update on DM's Guild, you'll get an email saying, hey, there's an update. You can go ahead and download the latest version. So, Otis's father. See, this is something that's been added a lot of people overlook. It's Zed Fletcher. Zed serves as the local militia captain in village of Hamlet. He's location number 2, I believe, the farmstead. A role that gave Otis early exposure to the idea of service and protection. So he was born in Hamlet, Cron Hills. He's the son of Fletcher, militia captain, and his wife, both respected figures in Hamlet. His early influences is his exposure to his father's role in the militia. Services and loyalty are instilled early. As you can tell, I added bullet proofs underneath this section to make it referenceable, easily digestible when you look it up really quick when you're at the table role-playing. I added another quote from Otis to help you role-play him, give you an idea of his personality. Okay, then I have another section of his historic life, his growing affinity for the wilderness. So between 540 and 551 Common Year, he expected to follow the family trade of farming. And young Otis, his younger brother, Otis in the village of Hamlet, the one that's drunk all the time, that could go with the players into the moathouse, that's his brother. He was captivated by the wilderness. He preferred the gnarly forest to the fields, spending countless hours tracking animals, learning their patterns. During one of his wanderings, he became lost, only to be found by elves who lived deep in the forest. These elves taught Otis skills in tracking, survival, respect for nature, sparking a long-life friendship with them. Now, his time with the elves led to his training as a ranger, developing skills that would set him apart from the average villager. Okay, next section. He does have animal companions, and these 2 owls and 4 sprites are not in his stat block above. In fact, I did not provide stat blocks for them. Now, the reason I did that, and it's encouraged by DM's Guild and WotC, that you don't want to copy-paste information from the WotC raw material, that if, when possible, you want to link it to that product for the player or the dungeon master to get it themselves. That way you have to buy the WotC product to get access to the owls and the sprites. They want me to put a stat block for an orc on the page when the stat block for an orc is in the monster manual. See what I mean? That's what they don't like. They want me to make stat blocks for things that are not in the monster manual or any of the products, like Otis. Yeah, there is a small stat block for Otis in the original Temple of Elemental Evil, and this is what they're talking about. But you're allowed to do it if you're converting it to another rule system, and it's required for that rule system to be 5e. Isn't that funny how that works? Okay, next era. Otis's curiosity and skills led him to many adventures throughout the Viscounty and beyond. In his travels, he encountered the powerful mage Mordenkainen, who, along with his apprentice Bigby, aided Otis, and along with his apprentice Bigby, aided Otis in defeating. Sorry, I just read that twice. Defeating a band of marauding trolls. So they defeated some trolls. And then the fateful meeting left a strong impression on Otis and opened the door for him to join Mordenkainen's secretive organization, the Citadel of 8, a group dedicated to preserving the balance of the Flanness. That's all accurate information. See how I added all that to make sure it's legal? Make sure nobody has a problem with any of this. And then I bullet pointed the important topics again. He met Mordenkainen, an invitation to the Citadel of 8, and he honed new skills. Okay, the next era. He returned to vigilance. So in 570 Common Year, he's shaken by the events of Emerald Meadows. Otis returned to the gnarly forest and the lands around Hamlet with renewed purpose. Yeah, so that the Battle of Emerald Meadows, shook everybody up. It made people look at the world differently in the area. There's a lot of adventuring right after that battle, until finally the lands were settled and clear. He vowed never to leave his homeland vulnerable again. Otis took up his old role with vigor, patrolling the fields of Y'dey and paths of the Gnarly. You gotta remember, the western portion of the Gnarly belongs to the Viscounty. Tirelessly clearing the forest of the remnants of the temple's influence. The Temple of Elemental Evil is in the Gnarly Forest, or at the edge, actually. It's at the southern tip of the Fens of Tor. He faced down bands of straggling cultists, hobgoblins, and other sinister agents who survived the battle and fled the wilderness. He drove them out, using his knowledge of the land, and became a relentless sentinel against the encroaching darkness. At this time, this is part of the T1 module Village of Hamlet backstory. Right after the Battle of Emerald Meadows, a lot of adventurers came to Hamlet for adventure and slew trolls and ogres and orcs and kobolds and goblins. So that happened for a few years until things died and settled down, and then there's peace in the land. As the word of his efforts spread, the fields and forests slowly returned to normal. Villagers felt safe once more, and the prosperity of Hamlet increased as crops flourished and trade resumed. This is what I was saying. Adventurers still passed through, but Otis knew their interest in the region was fleeting. Unlike him, they would not remain once the land was safe again. The villagers began to rely on Otis as both the protector and the semblance of resilience. They no longer whispered questions of his loyalty. Instead, they looked at him with pride. There's a missing portion of the history where he wasn't at the Battle of Emerald Meadows, that he got sidetracked with the Circle of Eight. You got to remember, the Circle of Eight wasn't part of that either. They were missing. They were greatly needed at the time, but they had a reason for not being there until later, when they were finally driven back after the Battle of Emerald Meadows, and Otis was with them at that time. That's why you missed it. So, reclaiming the Gnarly, bullet points of what we just said. The next era starts in 574 Common Year, lingering regrets with the weight of responsibility. Otis's grief over Surtun's death and his own perceived failures weighed on him. Despite the passing years, he would not forget his absence at Emerald Meadows, or the possibility that he might have saved Surtun. So Surtun died in the Battle of the Meadows, and he feels guilty. Only a few of the Circle of Eight showed up, and Surtun was one of them. As he patrolled the roads and forest paths, he could not escape the haunting memories of the battle he had missed, the implications of what might have happened had he and the Citadel of Eight united in their moment. He often finds himself standing at the ruins of the Temple of Elemental Evil, staring at the stones, as if trying to divine some answer. Could he have prevented the rise of the temple altogether? That's what he questioned. He's got enduring guilt. He does frequently patrol the area, and solitary defender of the village of Hamlet. So you got to remember, this is in the year 574 Common Year to 576. So the Temple of Elemental Evil module says that adventure is supposed to start in 578 Common Year, by the way. I really didn't know that until I looked it up again. So Randy, Dungeon Master that runs Pathfinder on the Discord channel, pointed that out for me. Thank you, Randy. Okay, now 576 Common Year. In 576, Otis took his mission a step further. He established himself incognito in the rough and tumble village of Nulb, a town of scum and villainy. He disguised as an ordinary blacksmith and ex-mercenary, he carefully monitored the Temple of Elemental Evil's growing influence, with rumors of a new threat emerging from within the temple's shadowed walls. Otis saw this as his chance to protect his homeland more effectively, using his anonymity of Nulb's chaotic environment to gather intelligence. His vigilance was no longer just an exercise in redemption, but a strategy to uncover and prevent threats that ever reach Hamlet. How do you protect yourself against the most powerful leaders of the Temple of Elemental Evil? These are very powerful characters, like Senshock is a 12th level wizard. If they want to put your players under, it's just going to happen. The players are not going to survive. So how do you protect yourselves against them until you're ready? A lot of dungeon masters, they just run D&D like a dungeon slog. They go into the dungeon, kill monsters and NPCs room after room, slaying everything in their path and collecting all the loot, and then finally get down to the 3rd and 4th level, and there's Sinshock, the 12th level wizard, just sitting in his room waiting for the players to come knocking. This is supposed to be an epic sandbox campaign, an open campaign where it's constantly. I have an article for recruitment, how many more forces are coming into the temple. I have articles on how they get the stuff in, all the slaves and all the loot, the logistics from divers, from Verbobank, from the Wild Coast, the slaves, pirate gangs, the bandit gangs, Lady Nissara's men, the nobles in the Viscounty of Verbobank too, how they're kind of behind it, and the gnomes in the Greenway Valley, and Queen Yolanda of Selene to the south. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of tribes out there that are collaborating with the Temple of Elemental Evil too. Bugbear tribe, Hill Giant tribe, and a Knoll tribe, and 2 or 3 orc tribes. And that's all laid out on my website. You can look all those up all you want with the interactive maps too. So you just click on that location and it pulls up those articles. Otis has no illusions about the danger he faces in Nulb. He keeps his true identity and skills concealed, maintaining the facade of a simple craftsman watching the temple's activities closely. He knows that should the Temple of Mental Evil rise again, he may be the first line of defense, a duty he's willing to accept, but knows he cannot fail his people a second time. There's an assumption here that might not be evident at first. At this time, nobody suspects the second rising of the Temple of Elemental Evil. All anybody knows publicly, worldwide, is have you heard? There's a new rise of banditry. It's out of control in the Viscounty of Verbobank and the Gnarly Forest. All the merchant roads are getting waylaid and ambushed by bandits. Somebody needs to put a stop to them. That's well below our notice. We're not going to take care of that. We'll let the local authorities do that. The Circle of 8 could care less about bandits on the road of being, merchants and their merchant caravans being robbed by some handful of first level, 0 level bandits. Who cares? But Hamlet, Rufus, and Otis suspect there's more organization behind these bandit efforts than anybody realizes. That's why they're here. Okay, so then I had a section here about his family, Hamlet. His father, his mother, and Elmo. So that's all there for you to use. And then the next page, so this is a pretty big article, his hidden identity and purpose. In reality, Otis is far more than he appears. He's a high-ranking ranger knight and a secret agent of the Kingdom of Furyondy. Now, I didn't make this up. This is part of his background from other products from Watchy, Living Greyhawk, and box set stuff. If I was to make this up myself, I would not thought he was a secret agent of the Kingdom of Furyondy. There's got to be some sort of backstory why he's an agent of Furyondy. He should be an agent of Viscounty. But that's what it is, and I'm not going to change it. Working under direct orders to monitor the growing threat posed by the Temple of Elemental Evil. He suspects, I would think, the remnants of a splinter cult is operating in the area, because that's possible. After the Battle of Vermilion Meadows and the collapse of the temple into ruins and the spells placed upon it to entrap it, because the creatures down below and the leaders were way too powerful for the righteous host to deal with. They were just too powerful. So they thought it was better off, rather than suffer more losses, just to seal the place. And he knows that. So it's not hard to imagine that there's still some splinter cults out there, out in the woods, out in the weeds, of like maybe the air temple or the earth temple. And so whenever they do pop up and cause trouble, people, that's the first thing you would think. It must be a splinter cult, remnants left over from the great first rising. Nobody's going to suspect there's a second rising yet. They thought it was pretty much done, taken care of. But he started to suspect that maybe some of these splinter cults are kind of hiding within those ruins. He hasn't entered them yet. Players are the catalyst for stuff like that. You get some players that always ask the dungeon master, how come he just doesn't go figure it out? I get that so much. I don't know where these players come from. I had a group down in on the border of Selene, and there was a bandit fort out there. They thought they could go back to town, tell the authorities, gather up all your men. The bandits are there in the fort. Go get them. They go, why are you even playing D&D? You're the adventurer. You do it. So he's disguised as a common blacksmith. He gathers intelligence and occasionally assists adventurers to seek his commitment to thwarting evil. Otis was once stationed in Hamlet, but moved to Nulb when the need to covert oversight became apparent. He maintains regular communications with the allies of Furyondy and Veluna, including Murfles Y'dey. Canoness is a human cleric of St. Cuthbert. That has to be edited. See, I caught something. I'll do that tomorrow. I bullet pointed the important facts. Level 10, his mission, and his allies. He also has giant owls and sprites. Is that right? Giant owls? Did I do that right? I should change that to giant owls. I'll double check that. See, I need you guys. Help me edit this stuff. Keep me square here. Okay, we're back. Where did we go? Back to the last page of his article. So the current situation in Nulb. Otis, now living incognito as a blacksmith in the village of Nulb, he maintains a delicate balance between his cover identity and his role as a vigilant agent of good. Nulb is a hotbed of good and evil factions, a place where intentions are masked, alliances shift like shadows, and every action is subject to scrutiny. The evil factions consist of cultists, bandits, spies loyal to the Temple of Elemental Evil, are vigilant, and they're all connected, making it nearly impossible for Otis and his allies to act without risking exposure. Otis is highly aware that any misstep could reveal his true identity and disrupt his mission. There's a lot more thought into that statement than you realize. If you've been following my work, you'll know that not only does the Temple of Elemental Evil dungeon have these 5 factions, well, 6 factions really, and they're competing to become the ruler of the Temple of Elemental Evil. You know, the fire and the water culture at each other's throats, things like that. Hendruk, the mouthpiece of Uaz, he's the supreme leader of the cult. Uaz is responsible for their second rising, by the way. And also you got Loth out there with her agents in there. So basically, Nulb has factions too. There's 2 pirate ships. One's a pirate smuggler, and the other one is a slaver from the Wild Coast, and with ties to the Scarlet Brotherhood. There's a mercenary gang in town staying at the tavern, and they're mercenaries, brigands. So who knows what they're going to do? Depends how what the players do, right? Players can even hire them. So much it can happen. Also, there's another evil brigand group from divers, and they're really powerful. They have a priest, Orcus, in that group. That's bad news. I like adding more gods to a campaign to make it more Greyhawk. One of the fishermen at the Fisherman Cottage is a priest of Wastri, W-A-S-T-R-I, Wastri. So it's a different spin on things. She sells potions. She harvests these ingredients from the swamps of the fens of Tor. And that's why she's there with her people. So, yeah, all these factions. There's more factions than that. Lady Nasara, she's a fallen noble. All her noble titles and lands were stripped from her after the Battle of Emerald Meadows. Her noble house in the heart of the Viscounty was found to support the Temple of Elemental Evil. After the battle, her father was hung for treason. And she escaped with her knight, Seneschal, to establish herself. And she's got her men here, too. And they're patrolling the streets. Pirates are all over the docks. Pirates and brigands are in both taverns. You got fishermen. And also the kids of the locals, like the craftsman, the wood chopper, the herdsman, the miller. They have anybody under 17 years old, they kind of get together, like the Lost Boys, hang out and spy on the Temple of Elemental Evil agents, get into a little trouble. So that's another faction the players could leverage. There's a lot going on, and the smart players will be able to succeed here, where dumb players will get slaughtered in a heartbeat. These factions are extremely powerful and high level. Otis operates cautiously, avoiding open confrontation and limiting his interactions with unproven adventurers or unknown individuals. See, that's key. So many players, especially these days with 5th edition, they all think they're heroes. Seriously. It just astounds me they think that. They think they're superheroes worshipped by common peasants from villages and expect them to bend over backwards and treat them like that. They haven't proven anything. And so even in the B2 module, the Keep on the Borderlands, unless those players come back with heads on a stick from the Case of Chaos, They're not going to be treated as heroes, plain and simple. I've had ineffective players before, like in the V2 module. They went to the Caves of Chaos like 3 or 4 times, and each time they ran away. They accomplished nothing. They did not come back with any proof beyond the fact, yeah, we went to the Caves of Chaos. There was a lot of caves. We almost got killed. Do you really honestly think they're going to be treated like heroes after that? Adventurers go there all the time and get slaughtered and never be seen again. As far as the villagers know, these players could be the bandits. They got to prove it. Otis isn't going to help anybody that comes into town saying, oh yeah, we're heroes of the realm. We're here to save the day. He's just going to give them a thumbs up and say, good luck with that. He's not going to help them at all. Did he give up his disguise? Same thing with today. His every action is calculated, and he rarely offers aid unless absolutely necessary. Together with Canoness Y'dey and the spy, Murfles, Otis forms part of an underground resistance dedicated to monitoring the temple's growing influence. I think he suspects right now that there's bandits holed up in the ruins there. And Smigmol is their leader. I think he knows that. That's about it so far. You gotta remember, players they're the catalyst. They gotta get this going. They only reveal themselves to those that are vetted and those who prove their worth in the struggle against the temple's forces. How novel. Do players ever think of that? Otis remains resolute, assessing each development with keen instincts. Otis's true objective is clear. He's there to monitor the resurgence of the evil in the temple, to be ready to strike if the opportunity arises, and recent intelligence indicates disturbing increase in the temple's activities, with rumors of cultists, mercenaries, and monstrous allies regaining strength. The malevolent forces that plagued Hamlet and the surrounding lands years ago are stirring once more, and Otis can feel the weight of destiny pressing on him. He doesn't have hard facts yet. He knows the battle against the temple may reach a crescendo soon. This is what you do as a DM. If he encounters adventurers capable of mounting a serious assault on the temple, Otis will join them. They seriously need to prove themselves for this to happen. They can't just kill... you're going to hit them with a bandit on the road. They're going to kill a couple of bandits, maybe even capture a couple. Good luck bringing them into Nulb. Those players would be dead. They wouldn't survive more than 30 minutes if they brought prisoners of bandits, unless they did it with their heads low and they snuck in or something. But anyway, that's not enough to convince him, just because they killed a few bandits on the road. So they would have to take out some other outpost, not just the Moat House. Remember, the earth, air, fire, and water all have other outposts out there too. It's all on my website. He recognizes the necessity of combined strength. However, he will not do so lightly. He understands that his life, his mission, are precious tools to the larger fight, and he will not jeopardize either for reckless, stupid NPCs, players. Otis believes that only the well-prepared, that's not going to happen, well-focused, had any hope of success against the temple's defenses. He values the preparation and strategy, and he looks for those qualities in others. That's not going to happen. Sorry, I'm just being cynical about my players. So, the bullet points are readiness for battle, selective alliance, and commitment to the cause. There you go. Campaigns should be hard. Because if they win, they'll be really proud of themselves. They'll be memorable forever, the rest of their lives. They'll remember that campaign. Unfortunately, it's very rare few that do that, to survive and successfully complete it. The brewing evil. So Otis senses resurgence of evil. So he suspects. Doesn't have any concrete proof yet. That's where he needs the players. And so this evil that once cast a shadow over Hamlet and the gnarly forest. The temple influence grows daily, and whispers of its returning power echo through Nulb. Otis understands that he cannot fight this battle alone, nor can he rely solely on his covert allies. With the arrivals of the new adventurers, he sees the possibility of turning the tide, provided they have the strength and resolve to match the temple's dark ambitions. They can't just say it, they gotta prove it. Otis dreams of a coordinated assault to finally silence the darkness in the temple's walls. If Otis's intelligence reveals a critical vulnerability in the temple's defenses, he will dispatch a message to his allies. Burn the mage in Hamlet. He stands ready to provide arcane support, supply spells and magical insights for adventurers aligned with Otis. Furthermore, should Otis uncover the full extent of the power, he will alert Burn, who will then call upon the powerful allies within Voluna and Verbabank. This organized force will be capable of launching a large-scale assault, the final death stroke against the temple. See how that escalated? And then I bullet pointed the rest of it, the rising threat, the strategic alliance, hopes of a unified strike. And then I ended the whole article with a quote from him. This is pretty much what he'll say when the players first meet him. And that's page 121. So tomorrow, hopefully I do another 5 or 6 pages, or 7. I have to create more artwork. But most of the artwork is on my World Anvil website. I could go on all day about this. We talk about this on live stream too. And if you have questions about this stuff and want to discuss this and collaborate, please, you're more than welcome to come to the Discord channel. And we talk about this every day, all day long. Also, weekly, I have a live stream at 7 p.m. on Sundays. At 7 p.m. MST time, and you're welcome to, if you're a Dungeon Master and you want to share your campaign with us, you're welcome to come on screen with me, and we can talk about this. If you have any questions about this campaign and what to do with it, we also answer questions. That weekly live stream is for me to recap what I did all week, because I know not everybody's able to keep up with all the work I do, because there's so much coming out every day that not everybody has the time to go over it all. And so I do this weekly recap just to catch everybody up.
Did you enjoy video? Consider tossing support on my Patreon. It's best way to support orcs. If you would like to see more content, subscribe and post comments below. It better not be bad.
Well, I hope you liked this video, and I hope you find value in everything I went over, and this article proves useful in your campaign. I also hope your players enjoy your campaign as much as I have. May your dice ever roll true.